Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector.
Well, welcome everyone to this very special program. I am your host, Aubrey Batchelor. Sailing this amazing Halloween ship of knowledge with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are trick-or-treating while you're entering the conspiracy sector. Happy Halloween once again, everybody. It's can't believe the energies, Chris, are dying and dwindling, and here we are around this time of year again.
Oh yeah, it's one of the most nutty times of the year when it comes to energies. The winter solstice and summer solstices don't, and the equinoxes don't have anything on Halloween because Halloween is the most veil opening and curtain lifting time of the year where everything just kind of mishmashes in one chunk, and from good, bad, ugly, and all in between. And it's chaotic for like it's not necessarily on the day. It kind of starts at the beginning of fall and then kind of bleeds into this big, massive, like knot of Mandela effect stuff, from time stuff to veils lifting to dimensional stuff, ghosts, demons, cryptids, all of it. So yeah, it's nuts how much activity happens around this time of year.
I thought I had a list here, but I can't seem to find it. I seen a deal about all the stuff that's going on this month. Well, Friday the 13th coming up here this week already, but I think
Mhm.
there's a few different super moons this month. There's a lot of stuff going on,
And a full moon on
alongside.
top of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you
Oh,
can just feel it. I know we've talked about this before, but not just the trick or treating and the decorations to get everybody in the mood, but you can just feel an energetic change around this time of the year. When it comes to things natural and not so natural, they all just kind of merge at the same time. And here we are yet again. I can't believe it.
We're already at the end of the year. It seems like we just started. Like people always tell me, it's like time speeding up. It's like people are perceiving time differently. Like it's just kind of this fuzzy blur as it goes through
Hmm.
the year. The only one that seemed to slow down was 2020 because there was so much nasty crap going on. So it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
it seemed to like drag anchor, but everything else just goes and just keeps going,
Uh,
and that's the energy's changing. Yeah,
the
yeah.
weeks go by slow and the years go by fast.
hmm Exactly. I could have swore like the months of March, April, and May of 2020 were just dragging. It's like once you passed like July and August, it seemed relatively fine, but it was just that beginning of the summer, it was just ugly right there in spring in 2020. But that it dragged because it felt like it was like almost like it was like bogged down with goop. But now yeah, we're already at Halloween of 2023, and it's the energies. I can already feel them. They're already all over the place.
Hmm.
We've gotten a few things happen around the house, from ghosts to some activities already happening in the area because of the time of year. So it's to be
We've had
expected.
we've had some of that happen here too, you look up at the clock and it's 11:11 and the dogs are staring off into the corner like looking and growling at something that isn't there.
Mm,
You can just kind of the feelings you get alongside of the, synchronistic time experiences. It's strange, and this time of the year it's ramped up more than ever. But we got another doozy for you here today. We're going to dive on into some mysterious vanishings and things that go bump in the night for this Halloween episode. Um, this whole world is filled with places to go missing. It could be the bottom of a icy crevasse, or else it could be the top of a mountain somewhere, or else it could be in your own backyard with you're hanging out with friends and you're never seen again. There's so many ways to go missing, but natural and not so natural, I believe. There's a lot of stuff going on out here. But we got quite a wide array of topics we're going to try to cover here in a little bit of time about vanishings and particular places that people go vanishing.
hmm Oh yeah.
And obviously, we've kind of, dabbled in this in the past a little bit, but many people are aware of the work of David Paulides. He's probably the most famous missing persons, especially in national parks, sort of a deal, not like true crime missing people and anything like that. But a lot of people are aware of his work, and we'll be diving into some cases that are in that vicinity, but some are quite out there. Pretty unbelievable. I hope I don't end up a statistic like these people that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, exactly. There's from missing people, there's so many things that do this. We've touched on this a bit in the past. You have people passing through portals, people just because animals get them, or military abduct them. That's what I found out. The national parks have openings to military bases, and they're actually being abducted. Some of them are being abducted and thrown into experimental programs. Aliens, of course. And then you have nasty cryptids. Bigfoot, or I shouldn't say Bigfoot, but Sasquatch and forest people have been blamed for some of it, which is not true. They have not done it. They have an evil counterpart, which is called a face eater or a troll that does some of it. But they look like a big baboon, and they've been alien controlled for some time. They're a nasty form. They're actually more out towards my neck of the woods here. There's a place called the Great Dismal Swamp, ironically named, that some of these creatures hang out in. Forest people go through there too. But yeah, they're responsible for some of it. But some of the missing people, they end up in different time frames. They end up in there's a famous case out of Arizona that a person walked into an old ghost town, and then he saw that it was active when he walked in there. He walked into this saloon, and everybody's active. Everything is everybody's like he thought was just in period garb. Walks in there, and he was wanting to get directions to somewhere, and he pulled out his phone, and he just pulled out his cell phone. Everybody's just looking at him funny. And the bartender walks up to him, and he's like, yeah, I can't seem to get any service here. What's going on? And they chased him out. They tried to chase him out of there, and he heard a voice in his head just say, back out the door the way you came, like literally just back out. And he ended up back in our own time. What he had done was time slip into a different place and time and didn't even realize it. The reason he had to backtrack was because he had to follow his own footsteps in the direction that he came to follow the conduit or the portal that led him there. And if he had turned and ran the other way, he'd have been stuck there. It sometimes has to do with positions and earth meridians and portals, the way they're aligned at a particular astrological alignment, or the way they're open to some like earth meridian or chakra point, or however ley line, however you want to call it.
It's like a key and a lock. It just aligns and everything comes together.
There's also a famous movie out there, a Beastmaster movie called Through the Portal of Time, where he ends up in a parallel universe, and the portal only opens up every full moon. So it's like between the two Earths, it only locked when it opened, and there was a key that opened it up. So it's the same type of premise. It's a cheesy movie, mind you, but it's the same premise.
It kind of makes me think of all these supposed vortexes that are on planet Earth. Just innocently hiking along, walking along, boom, a vortex opens and I'm gone. I wonder if that's the type of alignment that you're speaking of, and 99.99999% of people would never expect it, if it happens too, right there.
A famous movie that described that was Flight of the Navigator, Disney's Flight of the Navigator, where this kid falls into a hole or just a normal pit, comes out, it's been 20 years.
So I'll have to watch that one. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's a very famous movie where it's a time travel thing, and then this alien helps him out by taking him back to the time frame in which he was lost from and realigning him back with his temporal frequency. And it has to do with frequencies, where if somebody's displaced out of time, they displayed this in Star Trek quite well, where they either have them lose consciousness, like you see if they warp around the sun or something like that, or they go into like what's known as temporal aphasia in the Star Trek lore. They go kind of insane because it's a frequency thing where you have to realign to a particular frequency that you were born into. And that's what the alien in Flight of the Navigator did to return him. He flashed his frequency to find it and put him back where he belonged, where he was taken from, and or where the portal warped him from, on the other end of the looking glass, pretty much. And that's essentially what is going on with some of these missing person cases. The best known ones are the triangles, and like the Flight 19 one where the planes disappeared, or any of these. And these are, people think they know about the triangles, and they really don't. What they are, they're temporal fracture points, and they're from an old war that took place that from 500,000 years ago, and it's called in the metaphysical circles is known as the Orion and Lyran Wars, and they depicted it in Star Trek as the Temporal Cold War and Temporal Wars, but that's a true depiction of time warping. This is where you get the Mandela effect stuff from, and this is why our government invented things like the Montauk Project and stuff like that too, and they became like a faction in the Temporal War. These beings, what they did was they were a version of ourselves from a parallel universe, and that were dying out, and they became enamored with technology, and basically allowed their core light or their soul to dim. And what happened was their universe was collapsing. They had basically an AI signal that was kind of their deity or their focus. And what they did was, it was basically, this is where the Nibiru mythology comes from, where you have it was basically a fusion of Asgard / Maldek and Earth in that universe. It was a mutated version of ourselves, and this is where you get some of the grays and all that other stuff from, or these white decrepit like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs sorceress look. They're known as Fomorian wizards in this time, but what happened is they crossed the space-time threshold. They ripped across the multiverse, and they caused these rips, known as time fractures or temporal fractures. And these things take centuries to die down. UFOs can fuel themselves on them, like vortexes. And vortexes and portals can warp you to different places, but time fractures are chaotic. You can get dumped to anywhere in the multiverse, dimensions, omniverse, super omniverse, anywhere, all in between, different planets, different countries, different times. They're extremely chaotic. In Star Trek Voyager, they depicted it as chaotic space when Voyager enters chaotic space, and these aliens help them navigate out of it after a while. They lived in the center of it. But the Bermuda Triangle and these other triangles, they are a specific part of the Temporal War, which would be Atlantis and Lemuria, because you have Atlantis, who, when they rose to power, they started just like what happened with ancient Asgard. Ancient Asgard was influenced by these entities that were outside the solar system, and telepathically, like how you would have demonic oppression now. It's the same difference. What happened was, that's how our asteroid belt got formed. That was the Ragnarok, where Asgard exploded. It happened in the past, not the future, like the Poetic Eddas and the sagas say, but the Viking sagas. But what happened was, the people of Atlantis, they were unified at one time. They were good, and so was Lemuria. These evil voices started coming across the ether because there was a council of women that existed at that time, like how the Nazis had the Vril. That's where Hitler got the idea from, because he claimed the German people came from Atlantis, and he wasn't totally wrong either. That's where you get the Rh negative and all that other stuff from. But with this group and the scientists at that time led in this Orion AI consciousness, and it influenced the people to switch to, again, a transhumanistic type of thing. And there was a temporal fracture that started to take place with Atlantis. That's why nobody can find too much evidence on it in the Atlantic Ocean. What happened was, then part of it sank, part of it froze, and then part of it was warped in a different dimension. The frozen one is Antarctica. The other portion, some sank into the ocean. That's where you get the Myrmidon and Mer people from, like in the movie Aquaman. Then you have another dimensional space where it never got destroyed at all, like a parallel world or universe. But what ended up happening was, there was this rip and tear effect from equipment that they had, the portal technologies that they had there, and the crystal technologies. And the Bermuda Triangle was the Atlantean one. The Devil's Triangle, or the Sea of Japan one, that was the Lemurian one, or Mu. So, or the bridge that just goes to nowhere off of the coast of Japan, and that one city structure. And also further down in Micronesia, you have Nan Madol. That's all Mu Lemuria, or the outer crust or edge of it. There in Hawaii is part of it. And then you have Vancouver Island, you have California, Arizona, that was part of it too. That's where you get the Mayan city and stuff in Arizona. But what happened is, the Bermuda Triangle, there's an island at the center of that. And currently our military, there's a faction there that hides within that, and they can navigate in and out, kind of like in Babylon 5, there was a group called techno mages. They could go through hyperspace no problem without any beacons or markers because they had the technological base to do it. Think of UFO level technology with our own military. That's how they can navigate it. And there's an island right at the center. It was the outer edge or crust area where Atlantis touched. And like how Non Madal was, and part of Japan was for, and Australia was for Lemuria. And Vancouver Island would be for the other edge, the eastern edge of Lemuria and Mu. So it's essentially the same thing. This is why people can't always find 100% evidence, because there was time warping going on. That's where you get the Mandela effect stuff from. And this is where some missing people go. They go into these fractures, and they could end up in another universe that lives exactly like ours. Like, say, one of the Bermuda Triangle is a famous one, even where they filmed the movie The Conjuring 1 and 2, that house, that famous house. There is a not a smaller time fracture on that property. Skinwalker Ranch and Stardust Ranch are two others. And these are temporal fractures. Now, in the show Doctor Who, they showed him going back to Charles Dickens' time frame with his companion Rose. And what happened was they found these entities coming in out of this dimensional tear. They managed to seal it or make it stable. But in our time, the Doctor would use it to fuel his TARDIS, getting temporal energy to fuel the TARDIS's batteries, pretty much. And this is what UFOs do over vortex sites like in Sedona, which was an ancient like spaceport. That's why you have rocks that look like buildings. So just a very, very long time ago, pre-Ragnarok time frame, pre-Orion War time frame, millions of years. People can't even fathom how long ago some of this was. That's why that's why Mammoth Cave in I believe it's in Tennessee, Kentucky, where there's rocks that look like tables and chairs, but then there's stalactites and stalagmites growing around because it's had a couple million years to form all that. But there were galactics here long before that were the colonists. If you see the movie 65, where you see people from coming outside and the guy crash lands on Earth and 65 million years ago at the asteroid, that is pre when Earth was colonized. And somebody was trying to say the message, we were colonists that came from outside and forgot our origin point. So that's and then the Orions made it worse. So with us forgetting our origins, but that's why evolution in some areas doesn't make sense. But the time fractures, these things, you could literally have a paranormal investigator on one side of the fracture. And sorry, Sammy's barking in the background there, but you have one guy on this side, one guy on this side. And you could literally text each other if the fracture or the universal points where timelines are close enough to each other. You could send a message across the fracture point to another human in a parallel universe, or yourself in a parallel universe. It would come out as like all screwed up. But if it's close enough and compatible enough, you can get a message through the mirror like that. You depict that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the parallel timelines. Loki, the series, awesome references there for the multiverse, and of course the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So these fractures have led to many disappearances, but you have also the government programs that abduct people, corporate programs. That's why people go missing in the parks. There's aliens and military working together to abduct people and conduct corporate experiments on them, from drugs to energetics to telepathy to God knows what. So and one of the famous cases, I do have a couple here. Let me see. I got to bring up the thing here. There's also a place called there's the Alaska Triangle and the Nevada Triangle too. And I'll screen share this. Let's see here. Yeah, this is my messy desktop here. Okay, here we go. Yeah, there is a famous. He was a representative of. So by the name of Hale Boggs, he disappeared, it says, on October 16th, 1972.
Yeah.
Boggs was aboard a twin-engine Cessna 310 with Representative Bigish. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah, he was out there trying to help him with his campaign and trying to help, colleague out in his own party, and it was the last trip of a lifetime, I guess.
And he fell into, there is an Alaska Triangle, but people also have to remember military operations exist in the area, and alien operations exist in these areas as well. Where if you fly into a certain area, it's also like that spot over the Arctic. The famous, Admiral Byrd saw that for the Earth. But aliens will disguise some of their sites, the sites that they're trying to do things with, where they have a base, as a haunted site. Whereas in a neighborhood, you might have a military operation an op that's in a condemned house somewhere, like in the movie Resident Evil, where you see the fake couple that's in the mansion that's connected to a military base where the zombies come out of. So it's like that. But aliens will make you think that it's cursed, haunted, some evil site somewhere. It doesn't mean that there aren't those, but they like to use that as a cover so people stay away from their stuff, from their places. They'll say it's cursed. Now, that's usually a clue that something is going on there. Like the Bermuda Triangle, like I said, there's an island controlled by military at the center of that, where they will abduct people going along the South Carolina to the Bahamas traffic lane. And then put them back. Like they'll implant people, they'll let the aliens do their thing along that corridor, the shipping corridor there. We experienced that on the way to the Bahamas. We had some weird memories come back to us about being abducted by military and aliens and stuff. It's fragmented.
Weird.
Yeah. The entire crew of that cruise ended up with major bloody noses after that. And nobody could understand. Every single person on that ship had a major bloody nose for a couple days. So after that, we were supposed to see that. And one of the most interesting things we saw on that trip was an old sailing ship that we saw in that corridor sailing. We even saw the crew members on board, and it looked like a Royal Naval vessel from the time, a clipper ship, a big old sailing ship. Like you'd think of a pirate vessel. And what happened was we could see the crew work, and we even waved at them, and they waved back and everything. What happened was the time fracture moved a slight bit, like a crystal, a diamond facet. It moved, and we saw then the old sailing ship faded away, and it was a regular cargo vessel that was there. It was like a Costco or Walmart vessel that goes along those shipping lines there. And so we for that brief period, like the two paranormal investigators speaking to each other, we saw each other across time. And this happened to the fort in St. Augustine too, which again, that you're close to the edge of the Bermuda Triangle. Every now and then you get a bleed through. And a set of paranormal investigators went to that fort in St. Augustine. I can't remember the name. I have it on pictures of it on my Facebook. We were there. We did a ghost box session there and all that. But with what happened was there were reports of paranormal activity. The investigators go there. Then they see the ghosts, what they thought were the ghosts of soldiers. And they happened to catch us at the right astrological alignment. It was around Halloween, I believe. So what happened was the people they were looking at were not ghosts. They were living humans, like we saw the ship down in that corridor by the Bermuda Triangle, looking at the people across through time. Therefore, that is what started the haunted story cases. So basically, the soldiers reported ghosts, but it was the people that were there to investigate the ghosts. So later on, see the time paradox there, or so basically a destiny paradox where you get a loop like that. And so it's very interesting when things get locked into more of a destiny paradox like that. So that can happen, and people disappear and go through time. There is a chick flick out there called Kate and Leopold, a very old reference that about parallel timelines and spherical time fractures and stuff like that, where this woman finds out she's supposed to go back in time because her image is on the wall of Leopold's house, but it was over 100 years old, or a couple hundred years old. So it was essentially a destiny paradox where you fall through a time crack, ended up in another time. And Fantasy Island picked on that a little bit too, like the old series where somebody went back through time, stayed there. He ended up being a historical figure. So it was essentially a destiny paradox where he was supposed to be where he
Mm-hmm.
went. So some shows have touched on disclosure in that area a bit, where disappearing cases weren't always bad. It was somebody that was supposed to end up at a particular moment in time to correct something, or kind of like Quantum Leap, where he went back and corrected the rights that went wrong, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they also had the other faction, governmental faction in that, which was you had Ziggy and Lothos, the kind of the Michael Lucifer dichotomy, where you had, or Thor Loki dichotomy, where you had the AI, good AI, Ziggy, you had Lothos being the evil one, and they were causing problems, or they government. It was basically a government faction causing problems, and you had Sam Beckett's faction that was fixing them. So
Mm.
it was essentially like all the cabal factions that are out there that like to diddle with the timeline, and they fight each other and compete with each other. Star Trek depicted that correctly when they showed the temporal war factions of aliens basically coming from other timelines and shooting and killing each other, essentially, and competing
Mm-hmm.
for temporal space or time spaces and everything. Same difference, just humans learn from the wrong masters, pretty much. But Trek is a great reference for a lot of this. So is Star Wars, but before I get too far off track, these other there's one more case I will touch on that I thought was actually quite interesting, because we passed through this area of Nevada. I didn't even know about the Nevada Triangle. I had no
I
clue.
didn't either.
And Hale Boggs disappeared in the Alaska Triangle. Again, heavy military controlled area, that they surrounded a pyramid in that area, which was from the Atlantean time frame, which was essentially what was causing some of the fracture to begin with. And it's a pyramid that could power the whole country of Canada and part of the United States if they'd allow free energy. And the military always surround portals, vortexes, and time fractures with bases so they can study them, dimensional tears, everything. Usually, if there is a portal that is recognized from ancient times, the military is not far behind. So
Yeah.
with their projects and their experiments, and
They
corporations that want
know.
to capitalize on it, yeah. Uh, and so this one here, I only just recently found out about this case. Uh, this was synchronistic. I found out about these two just before our show. So uh, this one is the mystery of, let's see if I can, oh, this is the Nevada Triangle. Where is, here we go. Here's this one. These are all Wikipedia files here that I found these. This guy named Steve Fawcett. And the interesting about this case is, Fawcett disappeared on September 3rd, 2007, while flying a light aircraft over the basin desert between Nevada and California. I've been there. So
Hmm.
plane was then, this is actually interesting. I found out a year, and David Paulides himself talked about this particular case, because it was a strange case. He said he knows it's dimensional and stuff, because a year after the guy disappeared, they had searched up and down that whole basin for his aircraft.
Hmm.
Everywhere his remains, they looked for him everywhere, with like weeks and weeks of search parties.
Not
A
one
year,
bone,
not one bone, not one
nothing.
bit of plane wreckage, nothing. A year later, all of the wreckage and his remains appear. Uh,
Weird.
and it's like he went back through crashed back through time, and there was some kind of Mandela effect warping, and it all got put back. Now, can aliens do that and put it back in the pattern it belongs in? Like if he crashed in a different time frame, could they warp it to now? Yes, they can.
Hmm.
uh, or did a portal or vortex or time fracture warp it into this time, and it just happened to pop up a year later? Yes, it's just like what was said in Star Trek Discovery when the ship warps into the 31st century. There was one of the characters that said it best when the character of Michael Burnham ends up, the female captain ends up in that time before her ship did. Uh, he goes, the rule of temporal mechanics is it could be 1 year they could appear, it could be 1,000 years they could appear.
Hmm.
And that is a very true statement. When it comes to a missing person, they could appear there. That crash he could have entered a time fracture, and he crashed, died, and appeared a year later in some kind of limbo state, and it ended up he could have the remains could have been aged 1,000 years for all we know, or he could have ended up a
Mm-hmm.
1,000 years ago, or 1,000 years from now, so, or more. So some people have flown over islands and gone through a fracture point or a portal point and seen dinosaurs. So, uh, and then they could see further ahead to when humanity was incredibly advanced. So it can go any pendulum swing way. It just happened that his remains in his plane was dumped a year later. That's what I understand about the physics of it anyway. People think I get too much from Star Trek, but Star Trek gets it from all of the actual physics, and they display it in the disclosure. They disclose it that way to people that understand it, like multiversal physics and all of this. Marvel's doing it too. A lot of other movies are doing it too. Like 65, basically talking about the pre-colony of Earth and all this other stuff, where the guy gets lost on Earth and dinosaurs are still around. It turned out that Galactics dropped the asteroid on Earth to get rid of the dinosaurs so they could colonize it without being eaten alive. But that's the actual story. But they didn't add that in, but they added enough to basically say humans came from elsewhere. They were humans are descendants of colonists. That's what the premise idea of that was. But get back on track. Some people could even end up back in that time frame as well. You wouldn't know because there's not any written record except somewhere in the depths of space. So. And the structures, the monoliths, and all this other stuff that are around now. Stone lasts for millions of years. So there are portals like Stonehenge that people have gotten lost around the solstice and equinox. They just vanish.
And what about like the Great Pyramids?
Oh yeah, the thing about the pyramids is interesting about that. It started out as a 0-point energy device like the Alaska one, and what happened was during the Orion Wars, the bad guys took it over. When the bad guys actually were partially they weren't fully defeated, or we wouldn't have them around now. But there was later on about, it was in the Atlantean period when Egypt fell. Originally, that was the Osiris Isis period. Then you had a few thousand years after that, the Great Pyramid was reoccupied by a different group that was more on the technological level of ourselves now. They were like, you could compare them to Elder Scrolls, like how the dwarves had like steampunk like tech and stuff like that, and gear like tech. But only these guys knew how to create a hydrogen collector, an energetic device. So they retrofitted the one thing that was already there. And what proves this is engineer Christopher Dunn proved that he showed that certain tools could had to be used to not only create it, but he was able to determine that the Great Pyramid was built in a much earlier period, and then it was retrofitted to be a hydrogen energy plant after a while. And everybody knows that the three pyramids and all the pyramids there in Egypt are aligned with Orion. That's when the Orions, or Fomorians, as like it's called in Ireland, against the Tuatha De Danann and Fomorian. That's where you get the end of Lord of the Rings, where he said the age of elves going to the age of men. That's that time frame. You go over to Egypt, which is also connected with that, because you see Celtic crosses and all this other stuff there. Well, those particular engineers were killed by the more or less advanced humans that were there. The same as with in Ireland, you had the age of elves going over to the age of men because the native Irish tried to hunt down and kill any of the more advanced people, or elves, quote unquote, that were there, the civilization that came before post-Atlantis. So what happened was many people think it's all alien, and sometimes it was just another race of human as well. But then you have that the hydrogen collector. There was an explosion on the inside. It was and that's why you had the inside of the pyramid was burned. They showed that there was a fire in there thousands of years ago. They were able to carbon date it back to about 8,000 years ago or something like that. But much more longer ago than they say the pyramid was actually built. But that's the story behind that, from what I can kind of ascertain. What was interesting though with Chris Dunn, he was able to actually prove it with science that it was at least a hydrogen collector, and it was something else that was retrofitted before that. But then you have Dr. Zahi Hawass, which is one of the biggest archaeological hacks of all time. Yeah. And what they did was Chris Dunn made him look like an idiot, because he was able to take these little spheres and prove that these bathtub shaped bowls, their troughs they had there, were not carved with these larger spheres. Like they ground out stone with these stone spheres because the angles were too sharp. It required ones that were on the nano level, which required a large amount of power to do it. And the physics didn't match up to what Dr. Hawass was saying. It didn't match. The science couldn't match it. It was based on more propagandistic view of Egypt versus the scientific reality, engineering reality of it. So, but the science prevailed in that way and showed, hey, this is the tool that would have had to have made these statues with the symmetric faces. It would have had to have made the pyramid. It would have had to have made these troughs. It was all using sound technology and also nanotech to carve out the inside of things. Like you see again in Star Trek Discovery with the programmed matter that carves out and builds things out of the nanotech and everything. Sound built the pyramids. Giants built the pyramids as well, and built the monolithic structures. They just literally picked up the stuff and picked up the stone. What also happened was there was some that looked like vitrified molten rock poured into. And when that happened, there were tools made that could melt the stone and fit it in place. That's why you can't fit paper in between. So, and it was sound frequency that was converting from liquid to solid at that time. So this is the type of technology that existed then. And there's fragments of that now, hence also some of the missing people coming across what they think is magic, and it's old technology. And from hundreds of thousands of years ago. So it just looks like magic. You got the show Outlander that's on right now, that are these time stones. They were touching on Elven Atlantean era technology is what it was. Not my favorite show, mind you, but they showed the same concept. It's too Harlequin romance novel for my liking, but it's a Harlequin novels on acid as far as I'm concerned. But, yeah.
Well, man.
I know I went into a lot there, but that's basically what I was able to figure out. Yeah.
It all fits and meshes together in this crazy world that we have. I do have one here that I'll dive on into. This comes from an article on medium.data driven, or what is that? Whatever it says up there. I can't pronounce that. Data drive.
That is really hard to see, actually. But
drive in investor, whatever. But
yeah, it's hard to see, but you got it. Yeah.
Katie writes, and everybody has heard of Dennis Martin case. That's one of the most talked about missing 411 cases. But for those that aren't familiar with it, this family, actually a couple of families, ended up taking a weekend camping trip that turned out to be not so fun. Let's take a dive into 3 of the strangest cases of missing people. And this Dennis Martin case is a good one, but the other 2 that are on this list are 2 of my favorites of all time. Number 1, Dennis Martin vanished on a camping trip. Dennis Lloyd Martin was just 6 years old when he suddenly went missing on June 14th, 1969 in the Great Smoky Mountains on a camping trip. In the decades since, there has been no trace of Dennis, not a clue, piece of clothing, or even a footprint. Dennis Martin's case was one of the first missing persons cases that really struck a chord with the person writing this article, but it was also, I thought we were going to dive on into it, it made national headlines back in the day. Because, hey, this little boy goes missing in this national park. That ain't a good, very top head storyline to be reading about. And the fact that he hasn't been found with all the search parties, you can see everybody up in this little picture here that was searching for him. And it's just crazy with the amount of people they had looking for this little boy that nothing was found. June 14, 1969, the day Dennis disappeared. It was Father's Day, and the Martin family had a long-established tradition of going camping in that national park. It was a late afternoon, and Dennis and his friends were playing hide and seek and decided to take their own spots to hide. The parents watched as the 3 boys playfully pranked their parents, went their own ways to sneak behind the bushes to perform a sneak attack not too far from their parents. When Dennis never performed his scare attack, the other 2 boys, William, his father, got worried and decided to go look for him. The search quickly turned frantic, and not a trace of Dennis has been found since. And that's the thing. They were playing an innocent game of hide and seek, not very far away from each other, and boom, he's gone. Into the investigation. The search for Dennis was enormous and included hundreds of people, even the U.S. Army. What happened to Dennis, no one knows to this day. The theories include that he was abducted by wildlife in the area or possibly of feral wild people. But most people believe he was a victim of a kidnapper. And the police have provided an age progression photo of Dennis to show what he would look like today, and that's him now. He'd be 58. But lot of people thought it was Bigfoot. So that's the crazy thing is, it could have been a reported Bigfoot that was hauling them out, a reported kidnapper. And this is just goes to show about the dangers that lurk out there where you do go missing. It can be, Earth's most frightening creature, man himself. And then there's everything that goes woogie woogie out there in the trees, in the bush, from mountain lions to bears to snakes, spiders, everything that this earth is made out of. And
there's
then
also child trafficking too. Somebody could have
yes,
taken into that too. So yeah,
yes, that's a very could be a possibility. But there's a lot of danger out there, so you got to be on your toes every second wherever you're at in today's world, basically. Number 2 is one of my favorites. Apparently, I'm getting some email that's making noise. Number 2 is Roanoke Colony Mystery, and being that today's Columbus Day, blah blah blah, which America was discovered by many people before him. I'm a firm believer. There's already people living here, number 1, but how did the entire town disappear into thin air? The Roanoke Colony. One of the history's greatest mysteries is that of the lost colony of Roanoke Island. This is right in your stomping grounds, too, right now. Mm-hmm. The story of how an entire town disappeared. The story dates back to 1587, where over 100 English settlers traveled to the United States in search of a better life. And that's when they found Roanoke Island, located right off the coast of North Carolina. It was decided during this time that a man by the name of John White would rule the new colony. Things in the newly formed town were running well until White decided to leave temporarily and headed off to England in search of supplies for the town. Due to unfortunate circumstances, he was trapped there for a total of 3 years, leaving behind all of his family. He finally returned to find something very strange going on. Not only had his wife and daughter disappeared, but the entire town. There wasn't a single clue as to what happened except for one word, Croatoan, written on the wooden post. No one really knows what this stands for, but some theorists believe the word refers to the island south of Roanoke, Croatoan, which was inhabited by Native American tribes at the time. This led many theories to believe that the town was attacked or possibly abducted by the inhabitants of the Croatoan. Other theorists believe that the town attempted to sail to England in search of White. As he had been gone for a couple of years, I guess no one will ever truly know. My theory as to all this, I really don't know. I want to say that they were taken in by the Croatoans, to help their survivability. But you think he would have been going and trying to find them, imagine being that guy, you leave on your own little expedition to go back and get food for everybody. You're gone 3 years. You can't just call them up like that telephone that you and I, or computer like we're doing right now. It goes all the way back there, and it's a ghost town. I couldn't think of anything more like freaky if you're him.
He was gone for 3 years because the English Spanish War, or the Spanish War. The Queen wouldn't let him back because of all the resources, like Sir Walter Raleigh's resources and everything were dedicated to the war effort. So it was 3 years. And the thing of it is, this is very synchronistic. You brought this up, Aubrey, because we were just in Roanoke about less than a month ago. We filmed a new updated show thing about for the lifting about the lost colony of Roanoke. Some of the things we were able to figure out was some got assimilated into the tribes, and that was actually proven because they found the DNA or the descendants of 2 of the known people. One of them, I believe, was the child that was born there. The first born child here was in Roanoke.
Virginia Dare, wasn't that her name? Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were able to find her, I believe, her DNA. I could be wrong on that, and then one of the other known leaders of the town's DNA, not John Smith, but somebody else. No, John Smith was Jamestown. Excuse me, I was thinking of the other leader. What happened was they found that some of the DNA was mixed Native American and white English. But some of them were killed. They found out some actually did disappear, like you see now, into dimensional slips and stuff like that. So we came to find out some of those things. We were kind of told a bit of a load about it in the very beginning from beings we probably shouldn't have trusted when we filmed the about Roanoke in the beginning. That's why I removed the video from our YouTube. We went back with new eyes, learned more of the history, and we looked into it a little deeper, more both reading the history and intuitive, and we kind of blended the two together. So it's very synchronistic. You talked about Roanoke, because this is the episode I'm up to in the editing process right now. So as we're talking about it, I have it in the queue next to edit. So yeah,
It's funny.
yeah.
They'll get they'll get 1.5 doses of Roanoke here coming up.
Yeah, and I'll air that before I'll air this, because this is going to air on Halloween. So for people watching this now, it's obviously Halloween. But then I have the Roanoke colony episode that we rebooted. We've been rebooting some of our old stuff on the lifting and on GSC. So yeah, so it's very apropos and synchronistic that this actually came up here too.
Mm-hmm. There is one more that I'll talk about real quick, and I know you'll like this one. It is probably one of my favorite missing groups of people to ever come across, and that is the Dyatlov Pass incident. Strange deaths in a Russian wilderness. It was 1959 when a group of 9 experienced hikers suddenly disappeared in the snowy mountains of Russia, called the Ural Mountains, also known as Dead Mountain. It took more than 3 months to locate all their bodies, but the circumstances around their deaths are still unanswered today. The group consisted of 7 men and 2 women, of whom were attempting to hike to reach Mount Ortorton. Yeah. They
yeah,
planned
insert Russian word here. Yeah.
Yeah, tongue-twisty Russian words. They planned a 2-week trek up to the snowy mountain. The trekkers pitched their tents at the base of the slope, and soon an intense minus 19 degrees Celsius blizzard chilled through the night. And that was the last we know of them being alive. There they all are. They were found in a forest 1 mile from the campsite in various stages of undress, without their skis, shoes, coats. 2 of them had fractured skulls, 2 others suffered chest fractures, and another one of the hikers had a missing tongue. The case was abruptly closed, and the deaths were ruled as a result of compelling natural force, stating that the hikers died due to hypothermia. The mystery has obsessed people ever since. Most people didn't take the police's word for it. As you can probably assume, people had a lot of questions regarding the mysterious case. Why would someone's tongue be missing due to natural force? Why were they partially undressed? And which natural force are they referring to? But it gets even weirder. The investigators found that the tent badly damaged, that it had been cut from the inside. All their supplies were safely located inside. It makes you wonder, why would they go outside in the freezing cold if they had a perfectly good tent to hide in from the storm, with access to their warm gear? Although the only plausible explanation as to why one of the hikers' tongues had been missing seems to be that someone or something physically removed it. There was no proof that any other people had been nearby their campsite. Many theorists also question the sudden closing of the case by the Soviet government, and in turn theorize their possible involvement in the incident, saying the campsite was a nuclear testing ground. To this day, nobody has been able to prove a plausible explanation for their deaths. And it really is freaky. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, from the statement by the coroner, due to a compelling natural force, and to the tongue, that could just be scavengers eating the tongue out. But there's been also reports that it looked like it was ripped out of her mouth. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's just weird, their actions, it suggests avalanche a little bit, but their tent was still standing. Basically, it was cut open. So if they're beat up from an avalanche, their bodies are bruised and beaten up, you think that tent would be laying down on the ground too. Mm-hmm. So it's a very strange case, and it ranges from Bigfoot to aliens. There was reported lights. In fact, one of the campers even took a picture of a light up in the sky. Obviously, it's an old camera, so it's not the best photo, but it's a very strange case. And if you guys haven't heard about that, I know we've talked about it once before, but look into it, because it'll give you some creepy chills for your nighttime.
Yeah, what's interesting about that case, and also other cases, people like to blame Sasquatch, Forest People, Bigfoot. I found out they don't like the term Bigfoot, but it's like it's more of a slur to them, because we communicate with them quite often. And the interesting case about the Dyatlov Pass, that was Yeti, and people confuse Yeti and Sasquatch, Forest People. Yeti are not Sasquatches. They are essentially reptilian troll-like figures. These are some people associate them with guarding like sacred sites like Sasquatch person is guarding a sacred site, kind of like Shangri-La or Shambhala, like they showed in the third Mummy movie, or like Mount Shasta, they cited Yeti around there. Well, Shasta is another site where military abduct people. Remember, military are at literally every portal, every opening, every national park. We got to remember that the military industrial complex has these bases everywhere. So with these Yeti, they were genetically engineered reptilian figures that will guard some of these places and also abduct people. What happened was there was an incident, and I believe was it the Himalayas? Yeah, where this man was walking up a pass and saw this white figure. But this man went up this pass and saw this white hairy figure and saw fire there where this being was around a fire. And I've mentioned this in some Sasquatch material before, but this man gets up there and he turns around. This figure turns around and there's a reptile face and not a forest person face or a human face. So it was a guy in a big coat for a little bit by a fire. Well, he kills this creature. They have it shaved and it looked like a reptilian. You can't find that information anymore. And the same goes with even David Paulides. And I mentioned this in our previous disappearing persons video, but it bears repeating. About 6, almost 7 years ago now, Joanna and I saw a video on YouTube. You cannot find this. It's like it never existed. And where David Paulides was basically saying some of these disappearing cases were associated with Sasquatch people, like in the Great Smoky Mountains and all this. And I found out they were the cabal out there and the corporations were trying to set up some of these set up these beings. They've even some of these military units, like in the Grand Canyon and stuff, have dressed up as dogmen and Sasquatch and made people think that it was forest people. When David Paulides mentioned this, all of a sudden the video disappears. And then I even mentioned he said he took it from his book, but neither is it in his book, nor is the video online anymore. It Mandela affected out of existence, or he had a reprint. I don't know what happened, but obviously he claims he never said it because people quoted him on it, never said it. It's not in the book, no video, nothing. And so it's either Mandela effect or it was redacted. But with people set up forest people all the time for these things. Now, are aliens doing these things too? Yes. Very famous disappearing case was one of David Paulides' collection that he talked about, where this woman was standing in her driveway with her 3-year-old son. She turns around, he's gone. She was right there holding on. He was right there holding on to her hip, and he's gone. About maybe a week or so later, he's found dead in a big rocky place, where he's like up on top and he's blue, his skin's blue, and they're like all like something disappeared from his hemoglobin, kind of like a vampire had done something. And the whole Blair Witch case was something like that too, where children had some of the hemoglobin disappeared. That's a different case altogether. That's a cryptid, a spider-like cryptid that actually comes out of the ocean every, like, I don't know, 100 or some odd years, some like a cicada cycling, type of thing. And it needs a certain type of energy or hemoglobin, and it can mind control people into gathering the children up and all this other stuff. This other case was alien, and what happened with that was they find him, and they had no clue how he got there. No 3-year-old could have gotten to the place where this was. Some people say it was also because his soul came from a different alien culture and they were just coming for their person. That's a rumor that goes around too, where he was born into a certain role and he was done with that role, kind of like a reincarnation type of deal. But with this falls under definitely alien abduction for that disappearance, because they didn't find it for a week, 2 weeks, something like that. And his body was perfectly fine. There was no decay or no rigor mortis, no nothing. It was like he had just died there, and completely flat out, like how you would be for a funeral, and that's how the child died. And it's a missing person case. I don't remember the names of all, but Paulides did speak about that one. So
he spoke about thousands of them, I think.
Oh yeah, there's thousands of these, the missing person cases, and they're all related to all of the above.
We've just tried touching on a little bit of the stranger ones in this episode and kind of how they go about missing, some of the theories and what could be happening to them. It's just so wide variety, and each case is so every every missing person cases is so different, because everyone has its own unique characteristics. But we haven't even talked about, like just the regular vanishings, of like kidnappings that go on and people
Child
that are
trafficking,
killed
all
by
that
other
stuff goes on.
people.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to find some outdoor wilderness ones that have happened that are strange, and some
Hmm.
accidents and places where people might just go through a portal and never come back. And I'm interested in the research down in Antarctica right now, going back to Mr. Captain Byrd, Admiral Byrd, and what he's seen, and now all the research that's been going on down that way.
Hmm.
I think there could be something going on down there.
Because
I
that's a
don't know
piece of
exactly.
Atlantis, you see, and this goes into Nazi lore because what happened with the Nazis is they faked their defeat in World War II, and like if you want to get an enemy off your back, what do? You play dead, and what they went down to Argentina and Antarctica. And well-known case, they had forces the Operation High Jump when Admiral Byrd took several naval ships. When they figured out there were Nazis in Antarctica, uh, they went down there, and the Nazis had higher technology. They had their famous Bellcraft that you see,
Hmm.
the Nazi Bellcraft. They based it off the original Nazi Bell, or the Glocka technology they got from the Orions or the aliens that taught them. That's how Hitler's forces got so much power so quickly. And I found out the United States and Britain also had ET backing as well to balance out who
Hmm.
was helping Hitler. So what happened was they were building a port there, and they were testing out portal technology. This is where you get the Roswell incident from. This is not very well known, where they were testing out a couple of years after the war's end. They were testing out portal technology so they could leave the planet. And
Hmm.
what happened was they tested out one of their Bellcraft, and given the Earth has a bunch of eddy and energy and magnetic currents all over the place. This is why UFOs crash all the time. They hit our planet, and it's just a big clusterfuck of energy. So,
Hmm.
old from the Orion Wars, that's where you get the Bifrost of Asgard and everything from, because it was all shattered. So Earth became this knot of like dimensional like hell, and mirrors and portals and all over the place, and it's realigning to a new kind of alignment. But it's so that's where you get some of the Earth shift alignment stuff from. But this, but in this, oh man, that really, my brain got wiped there for a
I
minute. But
know, it's weird. You can tell the energies are off. I knew it was going to be this way today. Right when I turn my computer on, I have these screens these lines all the way across my screen, and I'm thinking, oh boy.
and this,
Uh,
oh, now I got it. It's the they always, when I do the Roswell thing, they do this to me. And what happened was this craft shredded across that rancher's Mac Brazel's property there, and it was everywhere. And the bodies that were found were not alien. These were genetically created clones that the Nazis created with knowledge from the aliens, but they didn't have the technological know-how. And these were human-esque, alien-esque kind of artificially generated life forms. Before they knew how to create the gray robots, the Nazis were making these mutant little like Igor-looking things, and they tested craft out with this, like they did with also with the Jews, where they were testing out different guns. They were testing out on prisoners. And just like the Japanese would try out different swords on prisoners, it's kind of like in the ancient times where you have a katana where it has several marks on it. That means it went through several humans
mhm.
before it stopped cutting. In
Hey.
this case, the Nazis would do tests on with weapons on people the same way, and with these clone beings in the craft. That's what Roswell about. I hate to say it, that one had virtually nothing to do with aliens. It was just alien tech that the Nazis were using.
Hmm.
So what was taught to them, and also hybrid tech does not mean that you superglued alien tech to human tech. It's just that the human understanding of what they are back engineering from an alien craft or alien teachings. So that's essentially where the humans were at. That's where we got the stealth fighter and bomber and all that stuff from, where us learning how to operate the alien tech and creating our own homegrown version of it. So
Hmm.
uh, this is essentially what that is. Every time I hit on the Roswell thing, people, it's a popular belief that it was EBE-1 or an Eben that a couple Ebens that crash landed there in Socorro and Roswell and all that. These were Nazi Bellcraft tests, and eventually they left for the Moon, Mars, and Ceres in the solar system in time. And NASA was the front to basically misdirect people so people didn't look for where the Nazis went. So, and also Operation Paperclip, when we got all the Nazi scientists, and Werner von Braun, essentially, he helped create what's known as the binary network, or the AI core, that basically what we have now is the mind control tech that make everybody dumber. That's what the Nazis wanted to do, so we didn't figure it out. And so that, I know that went off track, but that's how some people become missing, because they get so screwed up by either AI interference or even alien telepathy, taking them out into places like the Superstition Mountains. That's probably one we should do sometime for a show. But where they found a missing college student up in the Superstitions. His bones were bleach white. He had no, it was just a skeleton with two big fang holes in the back of his head.
Chupacabra?
Yeah, well, it was a big Draco reptilian, because it's a reptilian nursery that's in the mountains there, and it's the natives even talk about reptilian creatures that were up there. The Apache talk about them. If people are looking for the gold, the Apache already have it, and there's reptilian creatures up in the Superstitions. So that's a missing person case. They found the remains. Even the cop or the investigator that was looking up there, he went up there by himself. He said it is so dizzying up there that you can tell how somebody could get lost. The energies are so chaotic.
I can attest to that after going and hiking up and through them. I've never been careless about my stuff. I lost a pair of binoculars. And I didn't even go up into it. I was just right I walked up to the edge and was just hanging out around on the
some
outskirts.
Magnetic energy anomalies and stuff that are up there that throw people off.
It's weird.
And all that.
Yeah. It's weird. It's like this attracting thing. It's exactly what it is. It's like a magnet.
It's attracting, and also the Draco will call out to people to try to get them to kill there, because they're trying to feed their young. See, so they come up behind, and the skeleton of the boy had the fang holes in the head. The way they kill people is they come up behind them like this and grab them. They crack their rib cage and they do that. That's how I knew it was a reptilian that did it. So, like a snake. So some are more raptor-like, others are more snake-like, and that was a snake-like one. So, yeah.
If I ever go, I'd like to go way up in there sometime, but I'll be packing heat with me. I can tell you that.
Yeah, if anybody's going into the Superstitions, take a gun with you, take a blade with you, take tools with you, and watch where you are, and basically know where your mind is at all times, because they screw with you up there. So yeah, I've been at the base of the Superstitions in Apache Junction there before, and it's disorienting. You can feel it there. And so I mean, that's an episode worth doing about the Parilla maps and the Jesuit the gold hunters, all that. Yeah, that's one worth doing here in the not too distant future.
I think we should.
Yeah. But that, I think we're at the portion of the show, unless you have anything else for the galactic portion.
Let's rock. Let's do it.
Okay. Let me get a drink here.
I can tell my dogs are getting upset at me.
Okay. Yeah. Sammy was going nuts in the other room a little while ago. So he normally doesn't bark at too much of anything, but if something goes by, yeah, he's going to lose it. So,
yeah, that's what I think's going on out here. We got a bunch of squirrels that tease the dogs, and
Sammy's afraid of squirrels, though. He'll see a few of them, he'll go the other direction. Yeah, okay, now I got to do this properly. Okay, I open the circle of true benevolence with no conflicting agendas, please. That's important, people, if you're wanting to do channeling or do anything. True benevolence with no conflicting agendas, which means you are going to get somebody who is compatible with you, what you're trying to accomplish, and they won't hurt you, pretty much. So that's what you want right there. So, so is this going to be Isaac this morning, or is this going to be a forest person? Who is this? Isaac, got it. Okay, since he also in his physical self, this is where telepathy comes in handy. You have the negative beings like on superstitions that are telepathically screwing with people, along with the earth anomalies and everything that's there in the magnetic fields that confuse people. Then you have the good ones that communicate, like the forest people and Isaac and them, Millennium Vets, and all the ones with the galactics that we speak to, and the elementals we speak to. So Elementals are getting high on the rise right now to talk to people as well.
Mm.
That's another topic for another show too, elemental life forms and stuff like that. But true ones, like tree vine looking ones and stuff like that. Not forest people are people think they are elementals. They're more like us. And you have true elementals that are ones that are part like earth, air, fire, water, stuff like that. So this is like, and have like a magical, like, not unlike the forest people, but then you have a separation there. We're show worth doing in the future too. But Isaac, yes, I know. I'll shut up so you can talk. He always does that. So okay. Yes, it is I, Isaac. Yes, always enjoy these programs. Always enjoy coming through in this capacity. Yes, this is a huge topic because as you guys covered it mostly already, this still continues to go on. People think that it is they're being made to believe that it is dying out. It is not dying out. It is just as strong as ever before. It's just that you have the mind control through your 5G. You had your nonsense in 2020. You had the distractive press that's going on. It's happening all over the planet, going into your experimental programs. You have over 40 experimental races that are here as well from the galactic realm. You know, multiversal dimensional things going on, all of the above and all in between, or as he likes to say, everything everywhere all at once. And this is the one time where I have not disgusted at him talking about the multiverse because he talks about it constantly. So this, which it's very prevalent and astute that he's noticing these things because this happens to be true in this case. Whereas the government experiments like your Dulce, for instance, in New Mexico, there's a group of Ebans that are there that are at your Sandia base. A lot of experiments going on. Some of your vaccine stuff took place there. Some of your viral experimental things took place there. Missing people going in and out around there. You have creatures that are experimented with on and created there. That's why you have forest people that are trying to put an end to some of the stuff that's going on there. Even they are abducted by aliens from time to time. This is why they generally can't always help people when they are in a skiff. So in this case, you guys have touched on a lot already, so I can go into some more into questions if you like.
Well, I want to question you something that you just brought up about what do you have any insight on Philip Schneider since you mentioned the Dolce base?
Yes, he was actually targeted individual because what happens is there is a timed disclosure going on right now. And there is one that is more of a wild card-ish type of disclosure that forces some of the other factions out there to release information early. Some of your political circus is involved in this, or mostly all of it. Anyway, you have your 100 years disclosure from the 40s and 50s all the way to up 20 some years from now. You have that going on as well. But with him specifically, he was releasing information that was in the minds of some of the factions out there was done too early to the point where they couldn't manicure it or not necessarily vet it completely, but manicure it into the blob of information they wanted to poop out into the press. So in this case, he was putting information out there that they then targeted him and eventually killed him. Yes.
Well, people have gut instincts whenever they're out in the wilderness, or anywhere really. If somebody's feels, they just get that feeling. How can they help identify that gut instinct to follow it for the benefit of themselves?
Well, if you feel when you're in a particular place, like say if you're looking for the forest people, for instance, they wish me to say this at this point, where say if you are looking for them and you get this feeling of dread, one of two things is happening. It could be one of their enemies doing this, or it could be one of the sentinels guarding a colony that you might be being targeted or by something else that they don't want around, and it has nothing to do with you personally. They are just not wanting to interact with what is dumping on you. And then there is another thing is that they don't want to put their colony at risk, or they just don't want to interact. Just like with you, would you want somebody walk into your house and interact with you and screaming your head off in the top of your lungs in your living room? No. So in this case, it's just like with you. Sometimes it's the forest people, sometimes it's another cryptid that is communicating, but your intuition is crown king in all of this. Always has been, always will be. Bad guys and any other forces can't account for this. If you walk into an area, there are many reasons why you're feeling this way. You could be getting communicated with by a benevolent force that's telling you. Your soul is telling you, for the most part, to stay away from a certain area. Just like when him and Joanna have got intuitive blurbs not to go to a particular place or to go to a particular place, it's for a reason. Or if they went to a place when their intuitions told them not to, that is a bad move. Just like he always regurgitates the story about the woman who invited her ex-husband over and said her intuition told her not to do it, but her Christian faith told her she must. She ended up having to have him arrested, and her intuition was crown king. So in those situations, know where you are at all times. Look around. Be cognizant, like what he was saying about the superstitions. Be cognizant of where you are, what you're doing, why you're there. You can't go into their flighty, but intuition is still crown king. If it feels wrong to you, don't do it. But if it feels right and it feels up and high and tingly, let's just say, then you're fine. So you have to trust your instincts at all times.
Oh, nice. So what are some just blatantly out there with everything and the information you're getting, the research that's out there, what you understand and know, what is just a couple of places just to avoid, the Bermuda Triangle, what's some of these places that you just don't want to go to?
Well, Bermuda Triangle, yes, people pass by it all the time. It even stretches up into Florida, where some people have gone missing. Now your Grand Canyon also has something, and he was correct. Sometimes they do cover government operations, and there are portals and time fractures all over the place. Now, am I saying avoid some of these places? No, but if you say perchance along a trail or something like that, it doesn't feel right, don't go in there. But in certain areas of Alaska, don't go wandering out into the deep wilderness, especially towards the area where they call the Alaska Triangle. That one is one of the most prevalent ones at the moment. Bermuda Triangle is extremely watched by the public at this point. If people would stop going in and out of it, it would probably heal. And if they would turn off the device, crystalline device that looks like kind of like Superman's Fortress of Solitude that's on that ancient island fragment of Atlantis. It's a small device. It looks like a crystal cluster. If they would turn that damn thing off, it would probably get rid of the fracture altogether. But avoid going into the depths of the Bermuda Triangle. But if you're on a cruise like they were, passing near it, you're okay. The Alaska Triangle is the most dangerous one. The Michigan one that you said pre-recording, there's a military base under there too, under all the Great Lakes. This is why they had the Flint, Michigan water crisis, is because they were trying to cause a false flag to get people to avoid looking in Lake Huron. So all the Great Lakes have these. Try to avoid as much as possible going into some of these areas, but at the same time, yes, investigate, ask questions, continue to do these things en masse. Just don't go wandering thinking like that college student in the superstitions thought he was okay looking for the treasure by himself. No, do not go be stupid or retarded and go into these places at all. Continue to ask questions, continue to demand answers, continue to push the boundaries, but do not think that you are brazen enough to go it alone like you are Clark Kent or Hercules. This is not necessarily the way to go at this moment, because they are, how can you say, flexing their muscles at this current point in time. And if people think they are deteriorating, they're not. They are changing stripes like a chameleon, and some of these other secret projects, like with the Nazis, faking their own death and going into Antarctica and Argentina. This is the same thing with your Kabbalistic type of people. They are shifting from one flag to another flag. They tried the QAnon thing. It didn't work. So they are shifting to something else, to another platform altogether. Watch for the changing of the guard, the changing of the stripes. And it won't be displayed completely on your television, but some of it will be, because they have to display what they're doing at all times. Keep watch. Don't go wandering into some of these facilities thinking, oh, I'm going to get them to give up this information. No, it's not going to work that way. But you do have to demand answers and demand change. So.
Very good. I think that it will do it. Very good information.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I always enjoy these particular programs. Halloween, I have warned him at the Halloween time of year is very, very prevalent and open, and I told him to quit whining about the activity in this time of year. So it can be annoying, but it is also quite fascinating. Paranormal field is not for the faint of heart, but it also should be deeply looked into as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.
He was kind of in a hurry because this time of year doing channelings is kind of like
Chaos.
this. Like yesterday when we went to Kill Devil Hills from the time of this recording, we went out and they had red flags up saying that the ocean current was pretty heavy. Think of Halloween like a big, frothy squall of a ocean current. And you can't, I mean, where things are slipping in and out of dimensional spaces and veils dropping. And think of like a dam suddenly bursting or dropping, like the wall disappears and suddenly the water is flowing in areas that it wouldn't have before. There's Halloween right there. It starts at the Samhain time frame, or Samhain time frame starts at the basically the fall equinox, and it goes into Halloween all the way till All Saints Day, essentially November 1st. Yeah.
For those that are interested, please go back, and Chris, you may post a link to our other Halloween episode that we've done, because we actually dove into that topic a year ago, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yes, we did. The Samhain time frame and the harvest and all of those things. Yeah, we touched on it on last year's episode. I can put the link in the description below for that. And also, I want to announce that Conspiracy Sector is going to get its own website here in the not too distant future. So Wix site to where I can put everything in one place, conspiracy sector related, even merch. We have merch that's coming up as well. So
Chris has been splurging. He's got some pretty cool items coming up.
From mugs to flags to shirts to hats to all of it. So it's already hit on galacticinterstellarcouncil.com and thelifting.net. There is a merch link to the store where you'll see merch to all three brands. So that's all. That's the goodies we have coming up for the holidays there, folks. So
that sounds perfect. That'll be your little tricks for your treats coming up here. But I hope everybody has a good Halloween. Hopefully the energies don't get a hold of you too much. I know I've been kind of beat up this last week, emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, a little bit of everything, and you just get bombarded every now and then. And I don't know what's going to happen. There's still, what are we at now? It's October 9th at the time of this recording. We got 20 more days of this spooky season yet to go. So may you have a merry one at that.
Yeah, so and let's hopefully you have a safe Halloween by the time you're seeing this. Had a great time here. So as we close this circle for this episode, you are now leaving the conspiracy sector. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.